So I got this message the other day asking basically how I managed to stay lean year round and maintain a pretty good physique without actually having to quote unquote diet and worry too much about, being in a constant cutting phase. The truth is, I've eaten the same way for the past several years now, and I don't really have to even think about dieting or, use brain points on what I'm going to eat or feel like I'm suffering constantly, in this sort of like hamster wheel of restrictive diets. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, you can just eat what you want as long as you're running, 69 fucking thousand miles a week, like most of these gurus online who are just lying out their teeth, frankly. But what I've landed on is a repeatable system that I've crafted now over the past, over a decade, that pretty much works for me every single day of the year. Meaning, no matter how I feel, whether, I've got certain goals or if I'm traveling, if I'm sick, if I'm doing a work season, that I can pretty much, always rely on this and never fail, and don't have to feel like I have to keep falling back into them restrictive prison sentence diets every time, I come back from a trip or when I feel like I've not been, quote unquote locked in. This system just works every single day. I've got fucking salt in my eyes. It's sweaty as fuck here. So this system is just what I've been able to use to pretty much maintain my physique no matter what. And this sits me in, a healthy, happy body fat where I feel good, I look good, I enjoy my training, my body works properly, my hormones are where they want to be, my gut feels good, everything sort of regulates together. And I want to show you this system today because this has worked for me and I think it could work for you. This isn't just me who it's worked for. I pretty much use this with every single client I work with now. The standout I've seen recently is from one of my clients who we finished up a cut in around February as he came in, at that sort of higher 20-25% body fat range, maybe even slightly higher. And I think, if you're still at this point, then a cutting phase is what you need. But once you get down to, I'd say, sub 15% body fat, when you can start to see some resemblance of abs, then this is where we sort of switch to this, year-round maintenance phase to build more muscle whilst actually pulverizing more fat and just start to help your body really regulate. Now, before I get started, I'm just going to crack open this zero alcohol. It's basically just a fucking flavoured Sprite. I don't even know why they say no alcohol. So around 2023, I'd say this was when I'd never felt so shit. At this time, I've been training for 8 years and followed every, typical bodybuilding influencer over the past few years and just never really felt like it worked for me. No matter how much I'd see people on Instagram, on YouTube getting really good results, I was able to build sort of a decent body, but looking sort of, at myself in the mirror, I didn't have that sort of, physique that really even said like that you take the gym serious. And you might relate where you've been training for a good few years and you can sort of see that, you've built up a little bit of chest definition, you've got some bicep, but just around sort of the midsection and just, spread across the body, it's like there's this just extra layer of, it doesn't even seem like it's fat because you could actually get down to the point where you can start to see your abs. But you've just sort of got this sort of layer. And this always felt like it fucked my whole physique. At the same time as this is when my sort of energy was just absolutely in the fucking mud. So as I said, every morning felt like I just couldn't get out of bed. And no matter how many supplements and different regimes that I'd throw at creating this big giant plan, and it seemed like there was always this one missing supplement that you needed to add into your stack, which is when I started getting to the supplement and biohacking rabbit hole. So the goal became to become this sort of health freak and max out every single part of my health and my tracking. You know, I had the Aura ring. I'm looking at every little bit of my sleep, researching different types of, you know, the best squat that's going to improve testosterone and all this sort of shit. And I got stuck in the weeds for years. I never actually got anywhere during this time, no matter how much I was crash dieting. So, you know, I was basically doing these shitty typical diets that you will see, you know, like I think the most typical is the fish and rice cakes guy. If you've not seen it, you have to go look at the fish and rice cakes guy. This was sort of the old bodybuilding approach, and the new age approach has been, you know, this, but plus things like oysters and liver and, you know, all these sort of like super healthy fat foods to, you know, testosterone boosting foods. You know, I'm sure you've seen these like top 10 videos to boost your testosterone and whatever shit. So I ended up somewhere that was, you know, the typical bodybuilding of, you know, bland chicken and rice. Well, I'd say bland, you know, like a little bit of paprika and it's fucking gourmet. And then sort of like was tinkering with this, you know, carnivore stage for a while. So I went through this sort of getting a little bit better results, maybe from just feeling more locked in or maybe sleeping a bit more. It's sort of hard to track at the time when you're doing so much shit. But I then ended up looking at carnivore thinking, well, I think I might be onto something and I've been getting decent results. So I slowly started to take out all of the carbohydrates in my food. And this was over 2022. So I started just going down. I couldn't fuck with the things like the, you know, the pig heart, and I didn't particularly like liver. I wouldn't say it was in my regime, but I was just going down to eating a shitload of meat per day. Now, this is obviously an expensive diet, and I just found that after a few weeks of it, of getting sort of better results, I started to feel really sluggish. I started to lose all my energy, and in the gym, I had absolutely fuck all. My lifts had dropped probably 20% in that month, and I just told myself that it's just a transition phase. And people say, oh, you need to wait till you go into the proper ketosis because then the ketones will start to give you energy. This is fucking bullshit. There's probably nothing more moronic, I think, than being heavy into or actually caring about building your physique and then not having any carbohydrates. So that was, I think, mistake number one. All right, I think we're back. So the iPhone actually just hit a temperature warning. It's not even sunny out, but it is about 39 degrees. So I've come out into the shade a little bit here. Going back to where I was, I tried the carnivore, felt like shit, had no energy. I tried all the supplement regimes, and this seemed to just, you know, never actually get me anywhere, and it was just a waste of money. And then I'd also tried doing forms of fasting. So I think the main one I tried was intermittent fasting, where I pretty much would only eat for maybe 4 hours a day. And this just actually started to make me look skinny. I'd say, you know, the actual feeling side, intermittent fasting was pretty good. But yeah, I noticed that I was just losing muscle pretty fast. So these were the tried and true methods that everyone had seemed to get results with online, but none of that shit ever worked for me. And yeah, as I said, 2023, I found myself in that place where I'd pretty much exhausted the supplements, the different diets, the fads, and still had this sort of like weird fat layer around my body. And now to the point, you know, a few years on, I don't have any of that shit. I'm not focused on all these different diets. I don't really do any form of proper fasting. And I've just sort of dialed in a routine that fits in my lifestyle wherever I am. And this is what's unlocked my life again, because it's gone from, you know, how can I fit my diet and, you know, training and everything into my lifestyle, and actually it just ends up taking over your life, because I was having to train 5 or 6 days a week just to out-combat all of the sort of restrictive and, suicide dieting, because when you're depriving your body that much, the only way that you can, maintain your body mass and, keep the muscle on is by training so much to force the muscle to not go away. So you've probably heard people say that, you need to train extra hard in a cut so you don't lose muscle. But if you've got your lifestyle set up right and your nutrition all follows in a way that actually works and regulates your body, then you should only need 2 workouts, max 3 per week, whether you want to build muscle, whether you want to focus more on losing fat, whether you're not even focused on training and you just want to maintain, through the summer. You shouldn't need to do shitload of exercises and, 5 or 6 chest workouts, exercises every single week, just, hold a fucking chest. It should only need to be hit a couple of times. And I'm not saying you go into the gym and just fucking throw a couple of, the pink dumbbells about. You fucking obviously train hard and you train correctly, but you need to make sure that you're not overtraining. And I think the problem is everyone ends up at this point where they're just sacrificing so much of their life to do these crash diets and then have to combat it with a load of training whilst they actually don't have the energy and they're so fatigued from it. So what I found myself doing was the fucking complete opposite of this, because I started to realize, well, 90% of the physiques in the gym who actually are trying, everyone just looks completely, I wouldn't say shite, but they look average as fuck. And this is blowing a cunt. Everyone looked average. So I just thought, well, what if I just don't train every single day, just train a couple days per week and give my body all the rest and recovery it needs just to let it do its thing. And then I don't even have to start sacrificing, all the foods that I enjoy eating, which means that I'm not having to yo-yo into this bulk, then back into the cut, then, I'm going on holiday. Right, I best do a fucking, 6-week starvation prison fucking diet. Now I'm out the fucking holiday. Now I've put on, 1.5 stone. Now I need to go into another cut. This just constant yo-yoing up and down is what everyone does, and they all look like shit. So I found, pretty much the opposite system that just means that I spend at the moment, and I have done for 24, 25, 26. So, 2.5 years now where I've only trained for 2 days a week. That's it. When you're traveling, you still obviously need some discipline. First and foremost, I don't drink. So that makes, staying in, the realms of decent calorie numbers or, not fucking your body up, not fucking your liver up, making sure that your testosterone stays high. I think obviously not drinking is the first step, and where most people are going to fuck it up on holiday because they want to go away and get spangled for, 5 or 6 days straight. Now, if you want to do that, then I can't really help you, because there isn't any sort of way to get around fucking your body up. Like, alcohol fucks your body up. There's nothing that's going to combat that. But if you follow a pretty clean, healthy lifestyle, I'm just out here getting probably 25 to 30k steps per day, going down to the beach, getting the sun in, not staying out too late. The difference is just having a sort of locked in routine that you can sort of do every single day. And what I'm doing now with my diet is, I'd say 90% similar to what I was doing when I was, back in my home life. And having it this way where you're not in the bulking phase and then in the cutting phase, but then when you're cutting, it feels so restrictive that you want to get to the end of it and then just fucking run off to Domino's and Wingstop to, absolutely bury your head in the sand to get fat as fuck again because you felt like you've just been suffering. But your body just wants to be at a healthy body fat year round when you eat right. And, this comes back to not just being locked in with your diet, but also just your lifestyle in general. So that does mean, consistent sleep and wake times. it isn't like something that's just sort of thrown about by Andrew Huberman where you just, like, oh, maybe I should get to sleep on time. Like most of the time, that is what's going to help regulate your body. This is what circadianization is. This is what we do with our circadian recalibration. Like this is the whole point of making sure that you live how you want to for the rest of your life, because you feel good when you eat good. You feel good when you go for a walk. When I finished doing, like a 15K walk over the next 2 hours, I feel fucking great. And yeah, you could say, oh, but don't you want to just chill, by the pool, like on the beach for the day? Yeah, of course. Like, but if you did that every single day, would you really enjoy that? Like, I'm not a fucking kind of slump who just likes to sit around and do nothing. And that's because it all comes back to the diet in general and how the system primes your body. This is what we do. It's called metabolic priming in our system because it primes your body to give you so much energy that you just want to, like my man just fucking running. It just gives your body so much energy constantly where you just want to be on the move. And I can't sit still for very long. Like, I'm going to film this video and get the fuck out because I'm sort of suffering sat here in the shade, not moving, when all the body wants to do is move and get about and just fucking like, I'm so ready to get into the gym. And this isn't because like, Wagwan, sat near the tram here. This isn't because, like I'm obsessed with the gym. As I said, like I train twice a week, 2 days every week, and that's it for the past 2.5 years. But my body is just primed and aching to go move some heavy weight. It's, ready to fucking go. I feel 100% right now. There's no fatigue. There's no like soreness. There's no run down feeling that you get when you finish a cut. If you've done a traditional cut or you've worked with a typical fitness coach, they will have you do these, starvation 1,800 calorie diets. Like I've seen this firsthand with quite a lot of coaches. Like I've been around this coaching industry for 5 years now. 5 years. So, I've seen what people do for quote unquote fitness and health, but there's nothing healthy about starving the body and putting it through, like restrictive diets, like no carbohydrates ever, or, like fasting and cutting out, food throughout the day so you can have one meal a day. Like, the fuck? 1 meal a day? I'd rather fucking chop my knob off than do 1 meal a day. Like, nobody wants to do that. And if you're doing some sort of diet or training plan that you don't actually enjoy just to look good, then you've not created a system or a lifestyle. You've got a prison sentence. And I think that once you're in this trap and you become rigid to it because you saw that it did get you some semblance of body results, you don't want to go back to where you was, or you're not going to try any different method because, you're convinced that the body is the only thing that matters. But ask yourself, how do you actually feel? Like we're shaking all over here. How do you actually feel inside? Do you have energy when you wake up in the morning? Have you got, like the willpower to do whatever your day is? Like, obviously not every day you're going to be in the tropics, just on a fucking 25K step mooch. You're going to have some bullshit in your life. You might have back-to-back meetings. You might have 10 hours at the office. There's so much variables that can go into your life. And if your diet feels like a slog or it's something that you're only doing for the physique, you're going to give it up because, the physique isn't the most important thing in the world. It's a byproduct of when you get your system right and when you actually live in alignment with how your body wants to regulate properly, then the physique will just come as a byproduct. Because, I hate these guys who are like, 2,000 years ago, the cavemen. But, the cavemen didn't have the knowledge that we have now. Yeah, they managed to not look like 90% of the global population at this point who don't look good. And it's going to be at the point where almost every single person, like pretty much, if you walk down the street, I'd say within 10 years, every single person is going to be fat. And if that hasn't happened then, it's probably already happened in certain parts of the world already. And this obviously tells us that traditional and typical fitness advice isn't working. The advice that you get 100 times a day on Instagram, that what you can ask ChatGPT for, it's not about the macros. It's not about how much protein, bro, or what's your carb split, what's the calories. It's the quality and the nutrients in the food, and it's in the actual setup of the day-to-day life. Because if you want to work in the morning, and this is where you get your best work done, there's no fucking reason you should be sitting back, a triple scoop protein shake, or, slamming steak and eggs when you've just woken up, because that's going to put your body into a heavy metabolism mode, which, is like the anabolism, catabolism sort of, defense. And people will say like, oh, you never ever want to be catabolic. That is how you lose fat. You have to be catabolic to lose fat. Now, it's in this, as I say, it's in the setup of how you structure your day, because you need protein to build muscle, but you don't need protein to feel switched on and to get your shit done and to feel really good. So it's in this setup of how I've been able to maintain my body by, eating protein when it needs it, eating more carbs when I'm training, and then coming down into sort of a keto phase. Like, I know I've slammed on keto this video, but I do a quasi keto day twice per week, because I fucking found a structure that I just follow, and it's repeatable every single day, every place. I don't need to bust out the air fryer here to stick to this diet. I don't need, a Michelin star chef. And I also don't need to be slogging at eating bugs and shit where I'm going for fucking tacos. Like, I'm literally finishing this video, finishing off my 20k steps and getting some tacos. And that's today's diet, because I know what the system is. So that's basically how I've been able to stay lean for the past 2.5, 3 years now. Because when you get your hormones in check, when you're not too overstressed and high cortisol from overtraining and undereating, and you're doing all this sort of starvation diets like the typical dinosaur bodybuilders do, then that's how you're able to eat properly and actually regulate your body to where you feel great, you look great, you've got high energy, you've got that lean jaw, you've got your body where you're just pulverizing fat on autopilot, and you're able to just maintain, a great physique. So if you want the actual full step-by-step of how I've been able to do this, I've actually put this together into a full video that you can go watch, that's going to give you my entire rundown and process for exactly what you can do, so you can just start doing this yourself. So if you want to check that out, just click this video here and you can get my full breakdown. Right, it's time to go get them fucking tacos.